If you're looking to hire virtual assistants to cold call in your wholesale business, look no further because I'll be going into detail about the process of hiring a virtual assistant and if done correctly, how it can make you $20,000 plus per month. Let's get into it. The first thing that's important whenever you're hiring a virtual assistant is making sure you understand the wholesale process. Listen, you'll be surprised how many people hire virtual assistants and they don't even understand the wholesale process. They haven't closed a deal yet, or they haven't made thousands and thousands of calls to understand how a call should flow and how to identify certain sellers, because you're not going to speak with every seller the same way. If you're dealing with a red personality seller that's aggressive, when you get on the phone with a blue personality seller, you're not going to handle them the same way you would handle the red personality seller. So being able to identify that and knowing how to communicate with those sellers are important, because that's how you're going to close your deals. Now, another thing that's important too, if you don't know how to identify that, how could you teach your virtual assistant cold caller when they come in to identify those different sellers, or just the cold call in general when you don't know how to do it yourself? So definitely spend the time, make thousands of calls, or maybe even close a couple of deals before you fill that position in your wholesaling business. Now, before I even put out an ad to hire virtual assistants, any position that I'm filling in my wholesaling business, I have a whole outline that's saved in a folder on my computer explaining what needs to be done on a day-to-day basis. Now, of course, whenever we're going through the training process, I'm going to make sure that I go over that in deep detail so the expectation is set before the virtual assistants even start with the day-to-day tasks. And like I said, that pretty much set the foundation and let them know this is what is expected of me on a day-to-day basis. I also have training videos in that same folder on how to use software such as PropStream, how to use software such as Call Tools. That's what I use in my wholesaling business, because while this particular virtual assistant is on the phone and making calls to the sellers, I want them to be in the rhythm of checking comps to see what the property can actually sell for. Even if they're not making offers, I want them to be able to tell me what they think the property can sell for, because you never know. If that particular cold caller is doing a very good job and I decide that I want to bring in another cold caller and move them up to acquisition role, then it'll be an easier transition if you're already getting them used to actually doing that. So getting them used to running PropStream by using video training for Call Tools, and as you bring more people on, since you got that process documented, you can just pass that same folder along to the next person that you hire, and it will help break down the process for them as well. Now, if you're enjoying the content so far, please just hit the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell, because then YouTube will push this video out to a larger audience and we'll be able to help more people here on the channel. And also leave a comment down below. Let me know, when are you planning to hire your first VA and what position in your wholesaling business you'll be hiring for. Now let's get back into the video. Now the next thing that's very important whenever you're hiring a cold caller in your wholesale business is making sure that you have weekly meetings set up with your cold caller. Now, even when you first starting out, you need to have daily meetings with your cold caller, because they're new in your company and you need to make sure that they're set up properly and that they have everything that they need to be successful in your wholesaling operation. Now, you have a lot of people out here, what they do is they hire virtual assistants and they just throw them on the phone and they say, hey, go generate me some leads. It's not going to happen. You're going to be upset with that virtual assistant and you're going to fire them. And you may have a good virtual assistant on your hand, but you just need to be patient. You need to make sure that you're in the fire with your virtual assistants. And if you're available to, you can be making calls alongside with your virtual assistants and pulling your calls so they can listen to it. And you set an hour or two aside to help them see, okay, this is how the beginning of the call needs to go. This is how the middle of the call needs to go. This is how the end of the call needs to go. And this is how you pass it along to me so that I can get this property under contract and get it sold. Now, while they are on the phone, of course, I love Call Tools because you're able to listen in on their calls and you can whisper to your cold caller if you're seeing that they're getting stuck in a certain point on their conversation. And the seller won't even hear you talking to your cold caller. So that's a feature that's great in Call Tools, but that just allows you to actually help your cold caller get to the next level. And you never know, if you having them training on the prop stream software and you have them running call tools efficiently, in 6 months to a year, they may possibly be able to move up to acquisition role if you bring another cold caller in. But those daily meetings in the beginning are very important, and as time goes on, having a weekly meeting with your cold caller to help give them a score on their calls are very, very important. Don't just throw your cold callers on the phone and expect them to bring in leads if you haven't trained them properly. And another thing, make sure that you don't wait so long to actually get your cold caller on the phone. So basically, whenever I hire my cold callers, by day 3, they're on the phones making calls. Now, I'm not expecting them to be perfect. I'm not expecting them to generate 100 leads in the first week and get me to the point where I'm closing a deal in the first week. It's all a process. You got to be willing to spend money to make money. You got to be willing to put in the time with the cold caller to actually make money with that cold caller. Because just think about it. What if you wait 2, 3, 4 weeks to actually put your cold caller on the phone, and when they finally do get on the phone, they quit on you, or maybe they're just not a good fit for that position, and you don't waste a whole month worth of time and you don't have anything to show for it. So that's why I say give them as much training as you possibly can for the first 2, 3 days, and put them on the phone and you train them as they go. And that's going to help them grow in your company. I know you're probably like, well, you're going over all this information, but you still haven't told us how do we find a virtual assistant. I'm going to let you know how to do it now. It's 2 different types of virtual assistants. You can have a virtual assistant that's local, or you can have one that's overseas or in another state. It just all depends on you. Now, when you first starting out, it may be better for you to get a virtual assistant that's overseas, because you'll be able to save money and you still can have someone that is very, very productive and definitely sound like an American cold caller. Now, of course, if you're hiring a virtual assistant in the United States, of course, you're going to have to pay way more than you would pay for a virtual assistant that's in the Philippines or in another country. I'm talking about it may be $10, $15, $20 more than what you would actually pay someone that's in the Philippines. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, you can use websites such as Upwork. You can use onlinejobs.ph. That's my favorite. I actually have a subscription with them that I pay every single month. And what I normally do is I have a whole weed out process in place, which I'm going to get into in a few. But those are the types of cold callers that you can have. It's up to you which type of virtual assistants you want. Now, back to the weed out situation. When I hired my first VA, I made the biggest mistake ever. I did not have a weed out process in place. So when I would go on onlinejobs.pa or upwork.com, my issue was I had a whole bunch of applications coming in from different virtual assistants. And most of the time, a lot of those applicants that are applying, they're applying for everybody. They're not even looking at the application and seeing what you're asking for or the steps that they need to take in order to be considered. So I have a very, very strict weed out process. And like I said, when I hired my first virtual assistants, I didn't have that in place. And that was a nightmare. I had a virtual assistant that showed up the first couple of days, and then certain days they would tell me that they had issues with getting on the computer or they didn't have internet. And part of my weed out process now is to make sure that you have a certain type of internet, to make sure that you have a working computer, make sure that you don't have a noisy background, and just having different steps of that process. If you don't have certain things, or if you can't do certain things at a certain time, it's going to completely weed you out and you're not going to waste your time lying. Now, I even have where the last sentence on my post, it tells them to do a certain thing. And if they don't do it, they automatically disqualify. That lets me know if this person is actually reading all the way to the end of my job posting. And if they're not, and they're just applying, guess what? I don't even look at the application. I just leave it in the inbox. But you can take that information, use it the way you want to. You don't have to have a weed out process, but it may cause more headaches. And if you do have a weed out process, you know you're dealing with somebody that listens to your directions and do exactly what you say. Now, if you want to see what my cold calling setup is actually like, definitely feel free to check out my video here. And that'll also just help you with your virtual assistant, because at that point, all you got to do is just add another seat if you're going to continue to cold call in your business as well. Now, the next step is the interview process. With the interview process, I have 2 separate interviews. Now, in the first interview with the virtual assistants, we pretty much going over the wholesaling process, what the expectation is, and I try to make that part of it as clear as possible. So if you don't want to work this position, you can go ahead and say, hey, I don't think this will be a good fit for me. Good luck with your search. I would rather you say that in the interview than to actually start the position and quit later on down the line. So I let them know everything that they'll possibly be doing on a day-to-day basis and how important it is and how I am when it comes down to the training process. I pretty much just give them a whole spiel on the process of wholesaling. And during that process, I also have interview questions for them, just basic interview questions that you can look for online, and seeing how they answer those interview questions, such as, how was your last situation with your previous boss? And if they bash their boss or whatever, I know that, okay, this person may not be a good fit for the company. Those are just the type of interview questions that you ask. Now, if they pass that part of the interview, then we go on to the second interview where we actually do a role play. So when we do a role play, I just want to see if they do have the experience that they claim they have. I'm not expecting them to be perfect, but I just want to see that they actually have some type of experience on the phones and that they can possibly adapt to the way that I cold call as well too. And that's pretty much the step 2 of it. And if they do good in the second interview as well too, then of course we're going to have a start date for them. And then that's when we get into what is being expected on a day-to-day basis. In the weeks to come, you can expect to really be training your virtual assistants around that time. Now, if you do everything that I mentioned in this video, you better believe you're going to have a successful wholesale business, and this is going to help you generate $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month because you're removing yourself from the cold calling role and you can focus on other parts of your wholesale business. Hit the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell, and I'll see you next time.